rebooted the machine, it's going to ask you to press any key to enter the actual setup of the installation media that you just created. Now that we've got the Windows setup right here in front of us, you're going to of course want to modify these to match the settings that you want. For this video, we're going to go ahead and leave them on English, and then United States, and we're going to go ahead and left click on next. From here, it's then just going to give us this window. You can left click on install now, and it's going to give us a message saying that the setup is starting. Now the next part is it's going to ask us to activate the Windows. If you have your digital key, feel free to go ahead and type that in right here if you would like. Otherwise, for this video, we can go ahead and skip this and we'll activate the Windows later. So for now, we're just going to go ahead and click I don't have a product key, and it's then going to proceed to the next step. From here, it's going to ask you to choose the type of install that you want to do, and you will want to verify with your digital code to make sure that you're selecting the proper Windows 10 version that matches with your key. So if you had Windows 10 installed previously, if it was Windows Home or Windows Education or Windows 10 Pro, you're gonna want to select the same thing, typically as keys will only work for a certain version. So in this case, I do have keys for a Windows 10 Pro, so I'm gonna go ahead and left click on Windows 10 Pro, and then I'm gonna go ahead and left click on next. From here, it's gonna bring us to the applicable notices and license terms. Of course, you are gonna want to click I accept the license terms, and left click once again on next. And because we are doing a fresh install and not an upgrade in this video, we're gonna be choosing the custom install Windows only, as we are not performing an upgrade, so we are going to choose custom. Now, from here, as you can see, there are multiple partitions. If you have a brand new drive, you may only have one that says unallocated space. That's perfect. If you do have multiple drives, you're gonna want to determine which one you're gonna be installing the operating system on. So here's a good rule of thumb that I've used. From experience, I've unplugged any type of external drives, anything that I don't need plugged in at this time, just to make this list a little bit cleaner, because there was one time where I actually overwrote a bunch of family photos because I didn't choose the correct drive. So I typically unplug anything aside from the USB that I'm using to install the Windows and the drive that I'm going to be installing Windows to. Now, there are instances in this case where you can see right here where we have had Windows already installed, and it's broken up the drive into different partitions, and you can usually designate which partitions belong to what drive, indicated by the drive number. You can see that all of these partitions are assigned to drive 0. You might have some on drive 0, you may have some on drive 1 or 2, just depending on how many drives you have on your machine. So what I'm gonna do is, because I don't want anything on this drive, this is the only drive that I want plugged in and that I want currently working with, I'm gonna actually click on one and then choose delete and then click OK. There's nothing else that I need to save on this thing, so doing this is perfectly fine. Of course, if you have data on a different drive, be very careful doing this because it is unrecoverable. Make sure that either you have your drives unplugged so you don't risk this, or you know what you're doing when it comes to deleting partitions. So I'm going to delete partition 1, and I'm going to delete drive 0 partition 1, or in this case it was 2, so we're going to hit OK, and that's going to leave us with 75 gigs of drive 0 unallocated space. Again, that's if you've already had installs on this particular drive. If you have a brand new drive, you're probably already going to see drive 0 unallocated space and then X for whatever type of free space you have. From here, we're just going to go ahead and click on next, as it's going to create the new partitions as it needs to. So left click on next. Once you've clicked on next, the wizard is now going to go through the process of installing the Windows media files, as well as updates, features, etc. If you're using a USB 3.0 flash drive and installing this on a solid state drive, this process will probably take you around 10-15 minutes at most. However, it will ultimately depend on the system specs or the hardware specs of your current rig. Once the computer has finished installing the files, it is then going to reboot. Quick pro tip, if you are stuck in a boot loop where it wants to shut down and then restarts into the setup process, shut the computer down one more time and remove the USB flash drive that has your installation media on it, so it can no longer read from that. It can actually read from the drive that you've installed the Windows media files on. Once the computer comes back up, it's going to bring you to this screen where it's going to say getting ready. Once the installation has finished, the getting devices or the setting everything up, it's going to bring you to this point where it's going to ask you to choose your region. For today's demonstration, of course, we're just going to choose the United States, but you will want to select your region, and then we're going to go ahead and left click on yes. From here, it's gonna say just a moment one more time, and then it's gonna ask you for your correct keyboard layout. Again, for today's demo, we're gonna choose US, but you'll want to choose what fits for you, and then click on yes. And then you can add a secondary keyboard layout if you want by clicking on add a layout, but for today's demo, we are just gonna click on skip here. The next process is gonna go through the network connection just to verify that you are connected to the internet, and if you do have a wireless card in the computer, it's gonna ask you to connect to your Wi-Fi. Since I am hardwired on this machine, it went ahead and found the connection, and then it proceeded to go to the account setup. Now, here's the next thing that you're gonna want to do. If this is a personal use computer, you're of course gonna wanna set up for personal use. Otherwise, you're gonna set up for an organization, and typically at that point, there's an IT department that will take care of it. So for here, we're gonna go ahead and click on set up for personal use, and then click on next, and then it's gonna ask you to sign in with your Microsoft account. Now, here's the option. If you are installing just a fresh copy and you've had Windows installed on your rig before, you're gonna want to use the same Microsoft account that you had on that old machine in order to move over the digital license. However, I don't typically sign into my rigs with a Microsoft account. I use a local account. So what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna choose offline account down here. From here, it's just gonna say sign in to enjoy full range, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna go ahead and continue by clicking on limited experience. And this is going to allow me to create a local account that does not use a Microsoft account. Now, the downside of this, of course, is that requires me to manually put in my digital key in order to activate Windows, which is what you can do if you do have your digital key, or if you want to, like I was saying before, you can use a Microsoft account to do that stuff automatically for you. It's completely up to you. So for this, I'm just gonna do YouTube demo, and then I'm gonna go ahead and click on next. And I'm just gonna go ahead and leave no password on this just because it's through a virtual machine, but you're gonna want to fill in a password, and it's typically going to ask you to set up some security questions as well. Once you've got that process set up, go ahead and left click on next. And once again, it's gonna say just a moment and ask if you do more cross devices with activity history. I'm gonna go ahead and click no. I don't need them to have all of this telemetry data. And of course, I'm gonna decline digital assistant as well. Those are completely up to you. Same with the privacy settings on your device. Online speech recognition, location, diagnostics, these are all up to your user preference. And again, for me, I'm just gonna go through and disable all these because I don't think they need any of this information. So I'm gonna go ahead and choose all of those to no, and then I'm gonna left click on accept. Once again, it's gonna go to the just a moment, and it's gonna finalize everything, and it's gonna tell you hi on the screen, and it's gonna start the process to take you into your desktop. Now, depending on the hardware of your computer, this could take a little while.